Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of the Live Ayurvedic podcast. I'm really excited about today's episode for two reasons. One, this topic, 2 rules for balancing the doshas, is really going to make what we've talked about in the last 2 episodes super applicable in your life. We're going to talk about how to use the qualities in your daily life, and it's a very empowering topic. And two, I have a very special guest. He's an Ayurvedic doctor. He's my partner. We work together. We're building a life together. And he'll be a regular on this podcast because he's an expert with decades of experience and a very successful clinical practice. I'm thrilled to introduce you to Ram Tamang, or Dr. Ram, as our clients call him. Ram grew up in the foothills of the Himalayas in Nepal, got his Ayurvedic medical degree from a prestigious school in South India, and he's been practicing here in Orange County for the last 18 years in his full-time Ayurvedic clinic. He's a lifelong herbalist, a teacher and mentor to students of Ayurveda, and is also a certified high-performance coach. And with that, let's get right into today's episode. Hi, my name is Afrin Supariwala, and you're listening to the Live Ayurvedic podcast. I'm an Ayurvedic practitioner, a lover of yoga, a Harry Potter fan, and a wellness entrepreneur. Ayurveda helped me heal from severe gut issues, and that's when I fell in love with this science of life. I found that the wisdom of Ayurveda goes beyond physical health to every aspect of life. In this podcast, expect fun interviews, practical strategies, and a space to connect with your inner healer. We'll talk about all things Ayurveda, wellness, mindset, and also living an eco-friendly and purposeful life. I hope you'll join me by listening, but more importantly, applying Ayurveda in your life. Enjoy today's episode. Hi, Ram. Welcome to the show. Welcome to this podcast. Welcome to this episode. I am so glad you're here. You have been helping me behind the scenes to create this podcast and supported me all of this while. So thank you so much for making the time and being here today.
I am excited to be here and I'm very, very happy for you and congratulations.
Thank you. So let's get right into today's topic. In the previous 2 episodes, we've talked about the doshas and their qualities. As I mentioned, that each of the doshas has a bucket of qualities. But today we're going to go deeper and you're going to share with us 2 laws, 2 rules to help us use the qualities to create balance in our life, okay? So before we go into the 2 laws, the 2 rules, tell us, why do the qualities matter? How do we see them around us?
In Ayurveda, qualities are everything with which we understand our life, our connection, our evaluation of ourselves, or our interconnectedness around us. Basically, Ayurveda says qualities is something that which every substance, whether it's organic, not organic, in it, they will all have qualities. And we understand everything just like the way you said, the qualities of the dosha is a group of qualities, with which we understand a human physiology and the emotions and the actions and the energy behind the qualities.
So give us some examples of these qualities.
So there are, generally speaking, 20 qualities with which we understand. This is the basic fundamental qualities. The whole concept is based on the opposite qualities, like heat and cold, dryness and moistness, heavy and light, and foggy and clear, smooth and rough, things like that. So it goes on. But the concept is, in Ayurveda, everything is a duality. It's like the male and the female energy. Both has to coexist and one cannot be without the other. It's the day and the night, or the moon and the sun. It's the qualities, the energies behind it.
Absolutely. And we use these qualities to really describe everything. Like you said, they're attributes to everything. So we say, oh, I'm hot today. Oh, my skin feels dry. Oh, this food makes me feel heavy. Even things that are maybe not visible to us. So for example, if I'm on the phone with somebody, I may say, oh, that was a cold conversation, or that was a dry comment. Even if I don't know who that person is, we get a sense of that interaction.
Very, very true. Very true. Because sometimes we say, oh, I feel like my voice is rough, or oh, he was very rough in his communication, or an individual could be like literally that's the emotional description. But sometimes you can actually see all of that attributes and the qualities in a physiology, like your skin, your hair, your nails, and you can actually see that, feel that, and touch that, and be able to say that.
So our body has these qualities, our activities increase or decrease the qualities. We're going to talk about that. Food can be heating or cooling. Foods have different qualities. So it's fascinating. I think this idea of qualities empowers us to use the concept of the doshas and help create balance, help create harmony in our life, in our activities, in our diet, in our lifestyle.
So true. Because there's no one quality better than the other. It's more about how does it resonate with your health, your body, your story. So literally it comes down to that.
So you mentioned there are 20 qualities, but I think for the sake of this episode, we're going to just stay with 6 qualities that are probably the most helpful and useful to begin to explore with.
I would agree with you so much here, because let's sticking to the 6. It would be hot and cold, like heaviness and lightness, and dryness and moistness. If you understand this, it will already make it very, very practical and very applicable for you.
Super. So we're going to look at these 6 qualities, and then now let's jump into the 2 rules, the 2 Ayurvedic laws for using the qualities. Can you tell us what they are?
Yeah. So the first law is like increases like, or like attracts like. Briddhi samane sarvesham. So which simply means that. And then the opposite decreases it, opposite balances it. Briddhi samane sarvesham viparita viparyayaha. That's what it means.
Okay. So like increases like, opposite balance. Let's look at the first one. Like increases like through examples of hot and cold. How do we experience heat in our bodies, and how does heat get increased, in what circumstances?
So the heat in your body is the qualities that we talked about in terms of doshas, the pitta doshas. It's the heat, the quality of the sun. So when you think about it, in your body, it is acidity, it is like a raised temperature, like increased body temperature, the inflammation, you can see redness of the eyes and the tongue and your skin, sensitivities, right? And then like skin flare-ups, loose bowels, heartburns, there's like almost like a burning urination, more like darker brownish urination, or loose yellowish stool. All of that is a significance of increased heat in your physical body.
And so from like increases like, how does heat get increased? What would increase that heat in our system already?
So what could increase that is your emotions, your thoughts, your breath, your activities. Now, how does that all mean? In terms of the feelings and emotions and your thought, your emotions, that is more like, when you have been more reactive, more snappy, more short, more, irritated, angry. That's a very fiery emotions. Now, in terms of the activities, if you're doing everything high intensity, workouts, like everything, you're always intense, and some people even tell you like you are so intense, then it is more like that increases heat. Then the other thing is the activities that you do when you do it, like in the middle of the day, if you do it, that's more of a chance of resonating that heat quality of the hot sun above the head. Then the other thing about it is the food and the spices. Like if you're taking too much of the pungent, hot and spicy chilies, fermented food, those are all going to be increasing a lot more heat, like coffee, alcohol. These are things that has a heating effect. So these increases the heat in your system. So it is your, the phase of your life. If you're a young adult, you're predominantly pitta already. And your body type, which means your mind body constitutional type, you already may have higher pitta than the other. And then if it's the season, if it's a summer season, you're going to have more pitta. If so, Your diet, your activities, your thoughts, your feelings, and your intensity in which you do things, your breathing patterns, like that all can impact and increase the heat in your body and your mind.
So, like you said, none of the qualities are bad. And in this case, it doesn't mean that heat is bad. It's just that if somebody is predominantly Pitta or they're exhibiting signs of an imbalanced, aggravated Pitta, like you mentioned, the irritation on the emotions and also on the skin or acidity, burning sensations, then you don't want to add more heat through your diet, lifestyle, routines. You want to instead use the second law, which is opposite balance. So you want to add cooling things into your system through the cooling practices, cooling thoughts, cooling foods. Can you give us examples of what can be considered a cooling, anything cooling from diet, thinking, emotions, and activities?
So, again, like how you said, I want to just add to that saying no qualities are bad. So sometimes the beautiful thing about understanding qualities is your weakness can be your strength, or your strength can be an extension of your weakness. So having just said that, what would be the cooling things in terms of food? Anything that is, like cucumber or cilantro, parsley, cooling, like the melons, watermelons, and rose water, all that's a cooling effect. And usually these are some things that we find more during summer in nature. Now, in terms of the breathing, like if you are allowing it to flow deep but slow, cooling, calming, and more composed. So there is a flow of things that's happening. So, it's not creating that high intensity, heat generating activities, low intensity, more restorative activities. Just rather than doing your walk, in the middle of the day when the sun is high, the cooling would be taking a nice simple walk during the early evenings when the moon is out, when the stars are out, has a cooling effect on your system. So that's the activities, the nature, the timings can do that. The cooling food is, rather than hot and spicy chilies, then you would do herbs, fresh greens, leafy greens, has a cooling effect. Those would be the way you would look at it.
So that's awesome. So to balance that excess heat, we add in these qualities of cooling. Also, like you mentioned, breathing, somebody who's trained in pranayama or, yoga knows that there are heating breath, cooling breath. There's the left nostril breathing, which is the cooling breath. There's also shitali breathing, which is cooling. So again, there's these techniques that help you cool your inner system quickly through your breath.
Correct.
And there's breaths that are heating, the breath of fire, kapalbhati, things like bhastrika. They increase that heat in your system, and they are more what you would describe as intense.
Much more high intensity, right? So then there's anusara breath work, right nostril breathing, that like when you make your inhalation longer than your exhalation, those are warming, all of them. So yeah, but again, before you try any of this, it's always prudent to work with a practitioner who's well versed in it.
Absolutely agree on that. So now let's move on to the second rule, opposites balance. We touched upon that a little bit, but let's look at dry and moist. How does dryness and moisture show up in our body, and how do we balance them?
So dryness and moistness, dryness is more like the quality of predominantly Vata dosha. And it's, when you think about that, like just imagine when you were like a little bit more exposed to a windy day, your skin becomes drier. And for those of you who have, who enjoyed convertible, or when you're on a bike, or when you're cycling and on a windy day, when you check your skin, you will be more drier. So the quality of the Vata is that lightness and dryness, and you would not only be seeing that and feeling that on your skin, but you might feel that on your nostrils, your dryness in the eyes, dryness in your lips and your oral cavity, dryness in your hair, dryness that you feel in your gut, which is reflected on the irregularity and hard stool, and the bloatedness and gassiness and burpiness. So all that can be a reflection of an aggravation of the dryness in the body.
So dryness relates mostly to Vata, like you're saying, if
Yes,
you're exposed to windiness, but also if Vata generally increases in your system through other activities.
correct.
What about heat? Can heat also create dryness?
Yes, in the long term, in a chronic condition of an aggravation of the heat can lead to aggravation of dryness, more dryness. But also, before I say any of that, when these qualities can be compounding effect through multiple things, your actions, the foods of your senses, your thinking, your thought process, all that impacts these qualities. So you must always evaluate where is it coming from for you.
Yeah, it's not likely to be the wind as much as maybe we're overstimulating ourselves, just having very busy schedules and just doing too much
Yes.
busyness.
Too much busyness, too much restlessness, ungroundedness, too many things to do. So that's the quality of the vata, movement. So that also in terms reflects as the quality of dryness in the long term within the system. So to balance that, you would immediately think about the opposite qualities. So dryness and lightness. So you would think about more warm, then moist and heavy. So, like the oils, internal oil or external oil for self massaging on the skin and the joints, and also taking healthy oils internally.
So, to balance dryness, we add the opposite, which is moisture or oiliness. And we do that through, yeah, like you said, oil on our skin, oil in the diet. What can be moisturizing foods?
Moisturizing food is again like the more of the oil rich foods, which has a natural oil in it. Something that can be cooked, not dry foods, but more home cooked foods with a little bit more like water content in it. So that's why a cooked meal with like soups and stews are a great way to work on balancing that dryness, internal and external.
Awesome. So, what about moisture? Can there be a situation where there's too much moistness or too much oiliness in the system? I understand that moistness and oiliness relate to excess kapha dosha. What does that look like?
So excessive moistness could be, yeah, like how you said, it's more of the water and more of the kapha. So there's more congestion, it's more heavy, more sticky, gooey, and gluey. That's what we call it. So it's almost the qualities of an ama. When it is in excess, that moistness also obstructs the flow and hence could be the cause or possible causes of imbalances or the discomforts within the body and the mind.
Can you give us some examples of excessive moisture and oiliness?
So sometimes, like you can see, an excessive moisture and oiliness could be like water retention in the system. When you feel a little bit more physically heavy, your weight fluctuating because of the water retention, the congestion, the phlegm, excessive phlegm, you feel those. And excessive moistness can also be like where you can, it's just excessive salivation and your oral cavity. Those are all excess moistness or excess kapha symptoms.
So, like a cold with a runny nose and congestion is typically excess kapha,
Correct.
and you balance that out by adding hot.
Correct.
You drink warm liquids, you're taking ginger, maybe some other spices to balance out and burn out that coldness.
Correct.
So that
The heaviness and the moistness. So basically warm water, like warm water or warm fluid with any spices that is a little bit more warming and heating. So it can be ginger, black pepper. If you don't have acidity and heartburns or any other concerns of the excess heat, then you could also use a little garlic, chilies. So this can kind of mobilize that. And then you can add a little bit more heating breath work. This is when the heating breath work of bhastrika, that which you said not to do when you have high pitta or high heat, you can do it here. Like bhastrika, breath of fire, kapalabhati, all that.
excellent. So we're adding that quality of lightness also to balance off the heaviness from cold. So we've talked about hot and cold, we've talked about moist and dry. Let's talk a little bit more about lightness and heaviness. What does heaviness look like? What kind of symptoms would you describe when someone says they're having excessive heaviness in the system?
When they say that, like again, it's almost like you don't feel like moving at all. You just don't want to get off your bed or off your couch. So that's the energy of stagnancy, right? Like that stickiness. You want to stick to your bed or stick to your sofa or your chair. Just don't want to move. But that's when you got to as human, we have that energetics in order to create, intentionally get off the chair, get off your couch, and do a little bit of that movement and do a little bit of the breath work in order to create that gentle movement, the heat, to mobilize and create a better flow. And so it's essential to, and then maybe sometimes even just getting out into, like, to the sun. I mean, for those of you who may not have too much sun, even just being outside, knowing that it's, during the day when you can actually expose yourself to the sun to mobilize your body, you feel the improvement of the circulation and lymphatic flow. And that literally helps you with the heaviness on the physical level, on an emotional level, get rid of the depressions. And we can go into the biochemical explanation of all of that, but the beautiful thing about it is that these are bioenergetics and the qualities and the concepts which is being validated by the modern science all the time.
Beautiful. So the heaviness that we experience either in our emotions, in our body, through eating heavy foods, like sometimes if I eat Indian food from outside, I feel like I get into a food coma. So heavy foods are things that have a lot of dairy, maybe cheeses, certain kinds of meat can be heavy to digest. You say that, oh, this was a really heavy meal, right? It's usually creamy, oily, buttery.
Correct.
And you balance that out by adding lightness, by either creating movement, or changing your thoughts and creating that lightness in your mind to shift out of that heaviness. What does lightness look like in terms of, is it that you feel giddy, or do you feel dizzy? Can that be lightness?
So, like, the lightness could be feeling ungrounded, spacey, and also feeling restlessness, that almost that emotions of excessive worries and anxieties. So that would be the lightness, like, again, ungrounded and spaciness. And so to pacify that, it's about you being able to, again, allowing the breath to slow down and decrease the breath rate. I would almost put it that way, making sure that it flows with ease. And then the opposite qualities of that would be to ground, maybe laying and practicing more restorative, relaxing, calming, and then grounding, which means walking barefoot on the sand, or being in the earth, or being in the nature by the ocean, or anything that can help you with the grounding a little bit more. And then so to create the little bit of the heaviness, even oiling your body and self-massaging can actually also help to create that grounding effect onto the whole system as well.
So, like we said earlier, lightness, or none of these qualities are bad. So we do want to feel light. When we wake up, we feel light and energized, and we want to experience that lightness in our bodies and in our mind. But too much lightness can mean that feeling of ungroundedness, restlessness, a little bit of breathlessness, maybe panicky. Even, I think, not being able to fall asleep, not being able to focus means that there's that quality of lightness. Your head is in the clouds.
Yes.
You're not able to root down and be grounded. And we also need heaviness when we need to rest and we need to sleep. So sleep has this quality of heaviness, and we need to be able to shift and dance between the lightness and the heaviness throughout the day. So none of the qualities are good. We want to experience all of them. At what point do we get concerned that, oh, am I having too much dryness? And how do we distinguish when it's important to get help?
A lot of the time, if you listen to your body, you would know that. But having said that, it's really using your intuition. And using your intuition in sense of saying that being aware of the connection of the five senses to your own internal system. Because when you know, like, for example, when it is excessive dryness and the dryness is starting to spread in every aspect of your body, not just the dry skin, but dryness on your joints, stiffness, more muscle cramps, dryness in the eyes, dryness in the nostrils, dryness in the oral cavity, dryness of the skin, you feel the dryness on your nails and your toes, all of that, then you know, okay, you need to reach out for help. Or you need to start doing something to pacify the dryness. So then you know that, right? Sometimes, there is a point you sometimes push it, but when you push it, it's almost like the barometers in which it can topple and becomes a disease. So Ayurvedically, we say before it becomes a disease, you want to pacify that. If you look at these dryness symptoms being seen on all areas of your life.
So if we see that there's a certain quality that just shows up consistently, either there's signs of too much heat or there's signs of that, oh, I'm always congested, I'm always having this water retention, then we know that that quality, that dosha, tends to go out of balance more, and we want to begin to implement activities that balance that dosha, either through practices, maybe using herbs and spices, changing our diet. A lot of people might not know that certain foods are drying. There's some things that are very obviously heating or cooling, and there are some things that we don't know. So it helps to have the guidance of an expert.
Always. That's why, the experts are taught and they know the exact qualities of it and how it would resonate with your body type. But however, just wanting to know that when it is going a little bit beyond in all aspects, like, if you feel dryness throughout the year and not just during the fall, then you know you need to be concerned. Because in generally, fall is more of a drying season and it's the time of the aggravation of the Vata. During the summer, generally you're going to feel very hot for sure. But if you're starting to feel hot, even during winter, even during fall, then you know, okay, now you need to pay attention. And then when, Kapha, like, winter and spring is more of the Kapha predominant time, but you feel the Kapha even during summer and fall, then you say, okay, I need help and I may have to reach out, or I need to do something about it by changing my habits, my practices, and look into other areas that is impacting you.
Absolutely. That's so valuable because that is where that empowerment comes in, of beginning to observe, notice, using your intuition, like you said, but making the changes, using the qualities around us. Do you have any homework that you'd like to give our listeners, how to make this applicable?
I would just say, just be aware, in your daily life, where are these qualities coming, how it's impacting you and how it's making you feel. So just know what you're exposed to, how it's impacting you, and how it's impacting your physical health and emotional health. And the minute you start to do that, I think that's what's going to be more empowering for you, and it would make you more aware to help you make changes that is essential to you and to write your own story.
Amazing. Thank you. We love getting homework, and I know you love giving homework. We want to
Always.
make this knowledge practical and applicable to everybody. So, to recap quickly, lots of qualities around us. The three doshas have their own little group of qualities. Being aware of them is helpful. I have a document in the previous episode that you can download that lists the qualities. And then finally, to recap the two laws we've talked about, like increases like, opposite balances, starting to apply that in your life. Thank you so much, Dr. Ram, for being here today, for sharing this incredible knowledge and wisdom. And I know you'll be back soon for upcoming episodes. And I will share a link to your website, your social media, and a place for anybody to book a consultation. You are seeing clients virtually for Ayurvedic consultations and coaching right now. So I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes. Once again, thank you for spending this time with me. And
Thank you so much for having me. It's a total pleasure. Thank you.
and you will be back soon.
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, everybody, I hope you found this episode informative and inspiring and useful. And I hope you begin to play with the qualities. We're going to continue talking about Ayurveda and more interesting things about health in the upcoming episodes. So for now, have a great rest of your day, a great evening, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to the Live Ayurvedic podcast. I hope you feel inspired to apply something in your life from what you heard today. Until next time, be well.